All right. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining me in this webinar. As you're aware, private cloud remains an important component within the digital transformation and cloud-first strategy of many organizations to host critical data and workloads. With this in mind, we are going to talk about the 10 things to consider for your modern private cloud strategy. Before I move any further, I would like to mention some few housekeeping items related to this webinar. The presentation deck won't be available for download. You can drop me an email at the end of the webinar if you want, if you need it. This session is being recorded and will be available on Bright Talk's website for on-demand viewing. We will have a dedicated 10 minutes Q&A session at the end of the presentation. You can submit your written questions throughout the live webinar. And lastly, I encourage you to rate and provide your feedback regarding this webinar, which will allow me to continuously improve. With this, let me present myself. I am Siddick Elaheebocus. Having occupied several positions within the IT industry, I am a technology strategist, a technical trainer, and a technology speaker with 18 years of international experience within the field of multi-vendor IT infrastructure and systems integration. As part of my job role, I provide technical and strategic digital advisory, professional services, and training to enterprises of all sizes within 3 core areas related to my expertise, which are data center modernization, workplace modernization, and security modernization. Within the data center modernization area, I concentrate mainly on physical data center, software-defined data center, hyperconvergence, private, hybrid, and public cloud, and also edge computing. Within the workspace modernization area, I concentrate mainly on modern desktop, enterprise mobility management, secure enterprise collaboration, remote working, and SD-WAN. And lastly, within the security modernization area, I mainly concentrate on zero trust, endpoint and cloud security, identity and access management, threat management, and information protection and classification. You can find more about me by checking my LinkedIn profile or just by making a search on the internet. With this, let's move on to the expectations, objectives, and agenda of this webinar. Please note that this webinar is vendor agnostic. This means we will not talk about a specific manufacturer, make, or brand. In the same vein, we will try to make this webinar as vendor neutral as possible so that you can grasp the fundamental concepts without any bias. It might happen that I take the name of some vendors only when giving examples. There will be no deep dive into the subjects. We will only scratch the surface regarding the fundamental concepts of a modern private cloud in a high-level bird's eye view perspective, as I will only have 30 minutes for the presentation. This webinar will not take you from zero to hero regarding private cloud. This webinar will allow you to have a non-exhaustive checklist of the 10 key things to consider for your modern private cloud. You can make further research after the webinar to deepen your understanding and knowledge regarding each subject or concept. One thing for sure, this webinar will provide you with enough knowledge to be dangerous. With this in mind, we have laid down the objectives and agenda of this presentation as you can see on the slide. The objectives of this webinar is firstly to provide you with the building blocks of a modern private cloud. And secondly, to help you move to the starting block to cloud ready your organization's IT infrastructure. Regarding the agenda, this 45 minutes webinar is divided into two parts. Part one, which will last for 30 minutes, will have a bird's eye view of the 10 top things from the trenches that must be taken into consideration for a successful modern private cloud strategy, focusing around people, process, and technology. Part two, which will last for 15 minutes approximately, will have a Q&A session. With this, let's move on with the presentation by talking about the first thing to take into consideration for your next modern private cloud in a technology perspective, which is software-defined data center. Now, this is a very hot topic and a buzzword today when it comes to data center and cloud arena. The first question is, what is software-defined data center, which is also known as SDDC? Unlike traditional hardware-defined data center where servers, storage, and networking were physical appliances, in a software-defined data center, we virtualize all resources related to compute, storage, and networking. That's, by definition, what is a software-defined data center in very simple terms. The second question is, why software-defined data center? Among other advantages, a SDDC is the fundamental building block for a modern private cloud, which allowed you to have the simplicity. For example, no more complex hardware based IT infrastructure to manage, which required depth expertise. It allows you to have agility, that is, you can scale up and out your infrastructure without any hassle. For example, adding a server, a storage, or networking appliance becomes an easy task. And also cost efficiency, that is, decreasing your overall capital expenditure and operational expenditure with lower hardware footprint, lower energy consumption, and lower maintenance cost, among others. Now, the third question is, what are the building blocks of a SDDC? What we need to build a software-defined data center? At a minimum, you need to have three things to build a software-defined data center, which are software-defined compute. In other words, as you are already aware about it, it's a hypervisor to virtualize your servers. Software-defined storage. This might be new for some of you. In other words, a solution to virtualize your storage appliances similar to virtualizing your servers. Software-defined networking. In simple terms, a solution to virtualize your networking appliances similar to virtualizing your servers. Lastly, one point that I want to make is that while SD-WAN is not directly concerned with the SDDC concept, I have personally seen a growing number of customers adopting SD-WAN as part of their modern private cloud strategy to lower down their MPLS WAN cost, to connect their remote officers or branch officers to their on-premise private cloud, while at the same time providing optimization and redundancy for the WAN links. With this, let's continue on the technology side by talking about the second thing to consider for your modern private cloud strategy, which is hyperconverged infrastructure, also commonly known as HCI. Now, what is a hyperconverged infrastructure? Simply put, hyperconverged infrastructure unifies computing, storage, networking, and virtualization resources into a powerful, easy to deploy solution that reduces capital cost and at the same time administrative overheads. A hyperconverged infrastructure is the preferred hardware architecture and the fundamental building block for a software-defined data center and for a modern private cloud, which provides the added benefits of simplified deployment and management. That is, most of the solution available on the market is rack and stack with inbuilt unified management solution. Secondly, easy upgrades. Most of the HCI platforms support rolling upgrade, which eliminates downtimes. This means that you can apply an update on one of the server within a cluster, and automatically the clusters will move all the VMs on the other member of the clusters, and it will do the upgrade, and the same thing will be automatically orchestrated and it will be done on the other servers as well. So that's an example of easy upgrades. Scalability and flexibility. With HCI, scale up and scale out is greatly simplified. They don't become a project like it used to happen in the past. And also improve performance and agility, because HCI, they are built for speed and performance. Just on a side note, if for any reason HCI is not suitable for your private cloud, because it might happen, there are situations where HCI is not fit for a private cloud, then that's not a problem. You can consider converged infrastructure. Just drop the H. It becomes converged infrastructure, which unifies only compute and networking resources in the same solution while allowing you the flexibility to connect an external storage appliance to scale your storage independently. Over here, just to provide you with an example, this is exactly what Blade servers and Blade chassis allow us to do. They provide us with a solution, a hardware solution, whereby the compute and the networking is integrated, and we can connect this converged infrastructure to an external storage appliance and manage the storage appliance independently of the compute and the networking resource. That's what we call a converged infrastructure. Let's move on to talk about the third thing to consider for your modern private cloud strategy, which is hybrid architecture. It's very important that when you're building your private cloud to have hybrid in mind. Now, what is a hybrid architecture? In a nutshell, a hybrid architecture is the combination of a private cloud with a public cloud to reap the benefits of both worlds. A hybrid architecture can provide several added benefits to your private cloud. Just let's have a look at some of them. The first one is all about hyperscale, which means you can scale your private cloud up or out on the public cloud and manage both clouds as a single environment. That's hyperscale. The next one is disaster recovery. You can seamlessly replicate your private cloud workloads to the public cloud, and in the event you lose your private cloud infrastructure, you can redirect all users to the public cloud to continue their operations. And the next one is about management and automation. You can leverage on the powerful management and automation tools available on a public cloud to seamlessly manage and automate your private cloud with an OpEx model. This is among the major benefits of a hybrid architecture. Also, a hybrid architecture facilitates workload lift and shift. For example, should you plan to migrate some of your workloads to a public cloud, a hybrid architecture will allow you to do what we call a seamless lift and shift of these workloads or VMs from your private cloud to the public cloud and vice versa. These are some of the benefits that a hybrid architecture can bring to your private cloud. Now let's move on to the next slide to talk about the fourth thing to consider for your modern private cloud strategy, which is vendor lock-in. Now, this can become a showstopper. I've seen customers having tough times with vendor lock-in, explaining why I've put this into this slide, and which is a very important point to take into consideration in your private cloud strategy. Now, what is vendor lock-in, by the way? Simply put, vendor lock-in means that a customer becomes 100% dependent on a vendor for products and services while being unable to use another vendor without substantial switching cost. Now, this can be a huge problem when selecting a single vendor for your turnkey, complete, rack and stack private cloud solutions, also known as black box solutions, whereby you cannot even troubleshoot a component without the intervention of the vendor. Now, this is what we call vendor lock-in situations. Now, vendor lock-in can be prevented by avoiding black box solutions from vendors, by choosing the best of breed multi-vendor solutions to build your private cloud infrastructure, and also as far as possible leverage on open source solutions to build, run, and operate your private cloud. With this, let's move on to the next slide to talk about the fifth thing to consider for your modern private cloud strategy, which is all about hosted private cloud. Now, what is a hosted private cloud, by the way? In a nutshell, a hosted private cloud is your private cloud which is running off-premise. Now, there are two known models of hosted private cloud. The first one is called DPC, which means dedicated private cloud, whereby you are hosting your private cloud in a third-party data center on dedicated hardware in an isolated single tenant mode. This is what we call dedicated private cloud. The second one is called virtual private cloud, also known as VPC, whereby you are hosting your private cloud on a public cloud in a multi-tenant mode. Now, the benefits of a hosted private cloud is that the infrastructure, data center facilities, power and cooling, and a variety of services and security options are provided by a service provider. Conversely, with an on-premise private cloud model where the infrastructure, data center facilities, power and cooling are provided by you and operated by your IT staff. Let's proceed forward by talking about the sixth thing to take into consideration for your next modern private cloud in a process perspective this time, which is automation. Now, IT process automation is an essential component within the software-defined data center, hyperconverged infrastructure, and ultimately in a private cloud environment. First of all, automation allows your IT staff to do more with less. Why? Because automation executes things faster and repeatedly. Automation is also more reliable because it is less prone to human errors. Now, this reliability translates directly to greater availability and optimized performance for your private cloud. Automation is the building block for a concept known as infrastructure as code. Maybe you've heard about it if you're implementing DevSecOps or DevOps. For DevSecOps or DevOps, IAC, also known as infrastructure as code, provides three benefits, which are, firstly, speed. Infrastructure as code enables you to quickly set up your complete infrastructure by running a script. The second benefit of IAC is consistency. IAC uses config files which guarantee the same configurations which are deployed over and over without discrepancies. And third benefit of IAC is accountability. IAC have full traceability of the changes made. No more guessing games about who did what and when. Now, with this, let's move on to the next slide to talk about the seventh thing to take into consideration for your next modern private cloud in a process perspective, which is SPOG, known as single pane of glass management. Now, single pane of glass management, as said earlier, which we used to call it SPOG as well, is a management tool that unifies data or interfaces across several sources and presents them in a single view, thereby reducing management solution silos. Single pane of glass solutions are most of the times unified solutions, which allows us to manage the core resources of our private cloud, like compute, storage, and network in a centralized way. SPOG greatly simplifies the management of hybrid cloud environments by allowing us to manage both our private cloud and public cloud with a single console, thereby reducing complexity and cost. Let's move to the next slide to talk about the eighth thing to take into consideration for your next modern private cloud, which is protection. A modern private cloud needs modern protection. As simple as this. It is in this context that we're going to talk about zero trust and software-defined perimeter, which are two new hot security concepts that you can consider for your private cloud. Now, with zero trust security concept, we don't assume that everything behind the corporate firewall is safe. Zero trust requires all users, even those inside the organization or enterprise network, to be authenticated, authorized, and continuously validating security configuration and posture before being granted or keeping access to applications and data. This approach leverages advanced technologies like multi-factor authentication, identity and access management, endpoint security technology, which we use to verify users' identity and maintain system security. Now, the best way to implement zero trust security for your private cloud is to start by exploring software-defined perimeter solutions, which are solutions devised to limit access to resources only to authorized users, all by offering cybersecurity and access management designed for the modern enterprise. If you want to do zero trust, SDP is a good starting point. With this, let's move on to the next slide to talk about the ninth thing to take into consideration for your next modern private cloud, which is all about cybersecurity. Now, with the growing cybersecurity concerns and sophisticated attacks worldwide, keeping your private cloud secure is not a plus, but it is a must. A simple antivirus and a perimeter firewall will unfortunately not be sufficient to provide adequate security to your private cloud. It is in this very context where I will highly recommend 3 things that you can include in your private cloud security strategy. Firstly, ensure that security is built in and not bolt on your various solutions or projects. I highly recommend that a security by design approach be adopted for your private cloud projects. Secondly, ensure continuous security of your private cloud by regular third-party audits and pen test. Thirdly and lastly, leverage on AI and machine learning driven security solutions to strengthen your private cloud security proactively rather than reactively. And with this, let's move on to the last slide of my presentation before the Q&A session, which is all about training and skilling. It's very important that you keep your manpower up to date. Now, that's where it's very important within your private cloud strategy to include regular training needs analysis for your IT staff. I've seen situations whereby training need analysis has not been conducted for the past 5 years. Now, the next thing is that when you are building your training plan, please ensure it is aligned with the strategic IT roadmap of your organization. Why I'm saying this is because I've seen on several occasions whereby the strategic IT roadmap is pointing in one direction in terms of a technology, but the training that's being conducted is totally in another direction. Now, such training which is not aligned with your strategic IT roadmap will not have any impact. The next thing to consider is about customized in-house training programs as far as possible. I'm not saying that official trainings are not important. They are important. But by experience, what I've seen is that when you customize a training to the nearest millimeter, according to the need of a customer or of an IT guy, and when you run this training in-house, the impact is much higher and the person is ready for action faster. That's where I highly recommend customized in-house training programs as part of a training and skilling strategy. And lastly, as far as possible, leverage on blended learning. Video trainings are great sources for training. That's for sure. But it's very important to ensure that your IT guys, they are having interaction with industry experts so that they can exchange on subjects, on real life scenarios and real life problems as well, which are very important for the training and skilling of someone in IT. So that's why I again repeat it, leverage on blended learning. Video-based training is good, but having the best of both worlds will really make a better impact. With this, that's it for the bird's eye view of the top 10 things from the trenches that must be taken into consideration for a successful modern private cloud strategy focusing around people, process, and technology. Now, we will proceed with answering some questions, and I cannot see any questions. The fact that we don't have any questions from you, we are going to end this webinar. Should you have any questions or you would like to discuss further with me, please feel free to drop me an email or connect with me via LinkedIn by scanning the QR code shown on the slide. On my side, I would like to thank you very much for your attention Stay safe and goodbye until next time.